This is called Serenity Mantra, the one that you guys did yesterday.
Yes. Where
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
this is the one we did yesterday.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. For some reason I thought it was like that. So it's like,
It's like here, like you take it to the pad and then
Mhm.
just top the
this
finger.
is Serenity.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Got
This
it.
is the one for the heart.
This is
Yeah.
right.
This is the seal, the heart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
one I'm using a lot. Like I even have been falling asleep with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I don't know, like it's just like something I need.
The heart needs, but
Yeah, I just need that release.
Mhm.
So I've been doing that one a lot, like even just sitting here. Like
love it.
even when we were laying down.
I saw
I-
you in this with
Yeah.
the cows too.
Yeah.
I'm like, good.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, let's do our opening mantra.
Oh, that's the quote.
The closing one is extra hard. That one's.
Mhm.
But when I hear the words, I don't feel like it's as hard. It's like harder if I'm reading them too.
Yeah, I feel like that too, just because like you're looking at the words, you're like,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah. Okay. Om Sahana Bhavatu.
Om Sahana Bhavatu.
Sahana Bhunaktu.
Sahana Bhavatu.
Saha Viryam Haravavahe.
Saha Viryam Haravavahe.
Tejasvina Varatitamastu.
Tehas
Yamina.
Varati Namastu.
Mavit Vishavahe.
Mavivishabhahe.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
I always love this one. Like if we did one only and not even the closing, I love like this. It's just such a good one too. It's like what
Yeah.
it means.
And that's in our manual, in the 200-hour manual. Yeah, I saw that. I was looking at, I kept.
That's what I'm
flipping.
using.
Yeah, I was flipping through it last night and looking at it. I was like, oh, this is
Alright.
heavy.
So this is a big thing that I think really needs discussing, and I think a lot of the times it gets overlooked, but collective and generational trauma is major. So we're going to talk about it a little bit. And then we're going to get into talking about mirror neurons also. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but this is also another way that, like, have you ever heard of like the sum of five? It's like they say, show me the five people you're closest to, and I'll show you who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And this also ties in with mirror neurons. And so this really helped me for like who I want to allow in my space. Like we're really careful about what we eat sometimes. We're really careful about what we watch, but we also should be really careful about who we allow into our lives and into our space. Because mirror neurons literally are showing us that we will become like each other. So the people that we surround ourselves with, I always tell myself, I try to surround myself with people that I admire, people that inspire me, people that make me feel good. And the ones that start to create angst or disruption in my body, I've really started to like be like, you know what, those are just not my people. And I have every right to just like not hang out or not invite that energy into my life. And so really working with that. So let's talk about this. Collective and generational trauma. A traumatic event is terrible in the moment. All the noises this morning.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Is terrible in the moment, but as anyone who has experienced trauma knows, it doesn't stop there. The emotional and physical ramifications last for weeks, months, and even years. But it's not just you. Your trauma can take a toll on others too, in particular, your children, your grandchildren, and other generations that follow. This is called generational or intergenerational trauma, also dubbed transgenerational trauma or multi-generation. The concept of the intergenerational trauma was pioneered by Vivian Rakoff in the 1960s. Her studies on Holocaust survivors revealed that their children were more likely to struggle emotionally than kids whose parents had not experienced genocide, excuse me. A lot of people don't tend to understand the intergenerational trauma unless those patterns the patterns tend to continue. They don't just go away on their own, says Susan V. Liu, as an assistant extension professor in family development at the University of Minnesota. If we don't deal with them, they actually end up compounding over time. So here's how intergenerational trauma may be affecting you and your family and how to break the cycle. Examples of intergenerational trauma. One of the longest running cases of intergenerational trauma still in effect today dates back hundreds of years ago to the mass enslavement of African people in the United States. Over the decades and centuries, those traumas were passed down to younger generations, in part due to outside factors of historical oppression like socioeconomic impacts and the legacy of poverty. There's also genetic elements of stress transmission and psychological factors like parent-child relationships that also play a role. Almost any significant trauma can spread to your children in subsequent generations. Other examples of intergenerational trauma include sexual and physical abuse. Research has found that at least 75% of people who sexually or physically abuse others were abused themselves as children. In the case of incest, this perpetuates the trauma of sexual and physical abuse across generations. And then genocide. Studies have shown that children of Holocaust survivors experience high rates of mental health problems than children of non-survivors. They can also experience physical changes like increased or decreased cortisol levels, which we've talked about as well. These modifications can make children of survivors either more or less prone to stress. And then debilitating accidents. Events like car accidents can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. Studies have shown that parents dealing with trauma may have a harder time connecting to their children, and children develop potentially unhealthy coping strategies like self-soothing as a result. So Native Americans, Jewish descent, Black people, all of this, these are big groups that are dealing with trauma on a generational level where it's been passed down. And so we can see that the trauma was vast. And so therefore it probably is going to require a bit longer to heal, generationally even. And we see that, you know, in society. This one says, did I already read the important? Yeah. Another common type of intergenerational trauma is historical trauma. And historical trauma occurs in a cultural group that has been systemically oppressed over a long period of time, says Anthony King, an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral health at Ohio State University. So, how is trauma passed down through the generations? Intergenerational trauma is perpetuated through a mix of behavior and genetics. Most obviously, negative cycles of abuse can lead to repeated traumas from generation to generation. For instance, parents may think physical abuse is the best way to parent their children. King says, but ultimately it contributes to the intergenerational trauma. So if a parent was being, you know, physically reprimanded for doing bad behaviors, then obviously this also travels down the line more often than not. And moreover, if parents have unresolved traumas, they may develop negative coping mechanisms they pass on to their children. For example, one 2015 study suggests that survivors of Ukrainian Holodomor, genocide were likely to experience feelings of anxiety and fear and to adopt behaviors like hoarding food. Their children and grandchildren later adopted some of these negative coping strategies and fears as well. The way trauma spreads can be more subtle too. Parents who have experienced traumas can struggle to develop positive attachments with their children and may have issues anticipating their kids' wants and needs. Though this lack of bonding isn't necessarily as obvious as physical abuse, it can cause mental and health and interpersonal issues for children in the future, like an inability to be vulnerable and trust future partners. Transgenerational transmission of trauma in offspring of Holocaust combat veterans and genocide survivors is an issue that attracted in the last decades the interest of the trauma-focused psychotherapists, mostly from a family systems perspective that perceives transmission from a relational point of view. That perpetuates contagious, repeated, and observable patterns of communication within family. Alternative approaches describe the identified PTSD symptoms in the second and third generation offspring of survivors of Holocaust as an adaptation of family values and beliefs following the family's historical track and its disruption, and not as a pathological reaction to the trauma of previous generations. In her neurobiological research, Yehuda addresses the question of epigenetic mechanisms to PTSD, where an epigenetic modification refers to a change in the DNA produced by an environmental perturbation that alters the function, but not the structure of a gene. That can be transmitted intergenerationally. She proposes an epigenetic model illustrated by glucocorticoid gene, the methylation, where an environmental exposure alters the function, not the structure of the gene, which influences the subsequent reaction of a person to a following traumatic event. Studies on PTSD in regard to cortisol levels and brain function measured salivary cortisol levels in Holocaust survivors, as well as in the children of Holocaust mothers having PTSD, as well as in infants of mothers with PTSD that were exposed pregnant at the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center.
Oh, wow.
So we can see how trauma is transferred, right? I think this is something also that happens a lot of the time. If a mom is experiencing any form of trauma while she's pregnant, it's always like the fetus and the baby are experiencing the same trauma.
I experienced trauma pregnant with Serena.
Same with all my kids. Yeah. It's like, even like I talked about, like being covered in stretch marks and the cortisol, you know, it's such a good indication that the cortisol levels were extremely high.
Mhm.
Let's see, are we on results?
Yeah.
Consistently, findings demonstrated alternated lowered cortisol levels in all persons with PTSD and their offspring, a fact that posed the question whether these findings might be interpreted as the result of in utero changes due to traumatic stress or the result of epigenetic mechanisms. These research observations are in the direction of an epigenetic explanation of individual variation and long-lasting effects, but have to be verified in future research. Yehuda's actual research approach is very promising as it attempts to offer a global view on gene expression and gene methylation, and to specify what differentiates people with PTSD and people without PTSD in order to identify causal networks that can help diagnose PTSD and identifying new treatment targets in the brain. So who is affected by intergenerational trauma? While intergenerational trauma can affect anyone, certain demographics are at a higher risk. Groups which have experienced historical traumas, including Indigenous and Black people in the US, are particularly vulnerable, he says. For example, the first generation of indigenous people who experienced colonization underwent undeniable horrors, but their children experienced those traumas as well as the traumas of their parents. That's twice as much trauma, Lou says. It's important to note that just because your ancestors experienced trauma isn't always a guarantee that you or your children will be. There's lots of factors that play in. There are people and experiences that can help buffer that trauma, even that generation or the second generation, then the trauma doesn't end up perpetuated. Thank goodness. For instance, Ballou says that many children who were forcibly sent to Native American boarding schools were abused and weren't taught how to regulate their own emotions. Instead, they learned to shut down when they were stressed. Later, when their own kids were in high emotion situations, they struggled to teach and connect to them, creating a distance between parents and kids and perpetuating the cycle of trauma. Trauma can also be passed down through your genes, specifically through epigenetics. Epigenetics is the way that your genetic code is expressed. According to Ballou, different life experiences can turn on or turn off certain genes. A mother's diet during pregnancy, for instance, can determine which genes are triggered in her baby, affecting the child's disease risk as an adult. This means that even if you had a perfectly happy and healthy childhood, you can still experience the effects of intergenerational trauma. Hi, Deb. We're on page 101. And we're talking intergeneration. So it says, one 2008 study showed that sons of American Civil War prisoners of war had higher premature death rates than sons of non-prisoners of war, being more likely to die from illness like cerebral hemorrhages or cancer. After controlling for socioeconomic and cultural factors, researchers attributed this difference in mortality to epigenetic changes resulting from the stress of prisoner of war camps, which were passed down to prisoners' sons. It's not totally clear yet how long the genetic impacts of intergenerational trauma can last in humans, Ballou says. Some studies on animals suggest epigenetic changes related to environmental changes can stick for as many as 10 generations. But broadly speaking, evidence indicates intergenerational trauma can be passed down for hundreds of years, spanning dozens of generations, such as in the case of intergenerational trauma due to slavery. In the end, how long a particular intergenerational trauma lasts depends on the variety of outside factors, including your desire to address your own traumas and break the cycle. Over time, behavioral changes can even alter epigenetic code for the better, Ballou says, since epigenetic changes aren't necessarily permanent. The focus is really on rewiring the nervous system, as we've been discussing over these past week. Says maybe our ancestors or our parents, or even we grew up in environments that were really unsafe. We're literally under physical threat, Ballou says. But now we have to train our nervous system that we're not in that situation anymore. I see it as aligning the nervous system. And I believe that any and all of us not only have the capacity to do that, but really have the responsibility to do that. Intergenerational traumas are negative experiences that are passed down between generations. Behavioral factors like cycles of abuse and epigenetic changes can both transmit. So we can see, like, in some of these demographics and groups that trauma responses are quite present, like alcoholism, such as like also incarceration and things like this. We can 100% relate this to intergenerational trauma. We have a lot of demographics that are healing as a whole, and we can see that still happening. I also think that this also has to do with women. I believe we have been overcoming trauma as well for a long time as a group, and searching for even our own equality, you know, and My mom's constantly reminding me too, she's older, she had me when she was older, but when she was married, she couldn't even open a bank account without her husband's permission. And so there's a lot of things, and remembering women didn't have the right to vote even for a long time. That came even after we gave it to African American people. And so we're also in that demographic healing, I believe, as a whole. So we have all these different demographics that are healing as a whole from big traumas, but then we also have just trauma that's happening in the home. And so who's to say how many generations this has been traveling down? When I happen to have like my awareness of my trauma came up, I was being with someone who was helping me to work through it and do it through guided meditations. And I felt like I was gifted the opportunity to see not only my trauma, but the trauma that had been passed down for generations, and to see how my family had been suffering, and also my part in healing this trauma for us all. And so, we don't have to take on such big things, but I want you guys to be aware that you might be unknowingly taking on trauma and healing trauma that has been in your family for a while.
So like I'm
So,
doing that,
Mhm,
just because of the transformation between my mom and my relationship,
mhm,
like it's
100%.
huge.
And then to translate that with your relationship with your kids,
Yeah, my grandmother I was named after, and she's German, so I'm sure that side of the family, maternal German Holocaust, and then my grandfather is Italian and migrated to the United States, and they met here in the United States. And so my mom went into the military and followed her father's, footsteps. And then my dad also comes from the military. So it all makes total sense. And yeah.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and so I really like to discuss this because I think this is something that we can carry around. I definitely see it in my own life, not just from my parents, but I can see how my children have also been traumatized by the experiences that I went through.
Oh, yeah.
And so also trying to inform and give them the information that we are all working through this together.
I think the other important thing as a mother that I would want to put into place when I become one is to tell the truth about everything and to not hold anything back, because I feel like my mom hasn't told me the full story of her past, and that she's not telling me something. But
Yes.
also the diseases I'm carrying, I'm not like, a lot of people in my family have acid reflux, and it's like not just epigenics, but it's probably because she was like when she was having these some type of thing as well.
100%. I even worked with personally healing my birth. This is also something that can be traumatic, as we have been doing births, in hospitals under fluorescent lights, and there's forceps, vacuums, and there's clamps, and there's cesareans, and there's all of this can be even traumatic. And so this transfers from mom to baby as well. And it's our first experience of coming into the world. And not only that, how the mom is feeling during the pregnancy. For me, I was the third. My mom was just about to get divorced from my husband, and she found out she was pregnant with me. So I had a lot of animosity to work through from her to me as she was pregnant even.
Wow.
And so even I came into the world with like physical ailments. I had hip dysplasia. So the sockets for my hips were not formed. The hips are all about joy. And so for me too, this is like another indicator. When you're born with physical things, you probably come in with something that you need to heal right away genetically, also to my belief. And hip dysplasia is something that also runs in my family. It's usually the youngest, and it's gone back for about 4 generations. I have an aunt who had it. She was the youngest, and I have a nephew who also had it, and he was the youngest. I was the youngest in my family who had it. And so we can see also how we kind of pass the torch. I always say that it's like we're going to be passing the torch. And as soon as somebody passes in our family, you can bet that the torch has been passed too. So sometimes when someone passes, we even start to amplify what medicine we have to work through as well, because then now they have finished the work in this lifetime and now it's like, okay, it's going back down the line. And so just having this awareness can really help us sometimes too, because I remember having such anxiety and such trauma at a very, very young age. I also had colic when I was born. And this is like another indication to me that I was working through generational trauma. I believe personally that this is something my spirit signed up to do. And I believe I came here to work through some of this for my soul and for my ancestors as well. And so, but
What
it,
about the ears? Sorry, I just have a question because I had really bad ear infections when I was little. So I'm just curious
yes.
which chakra or which emotion is that?
I can tell you right now because I know my son went through it, but did your parents argue a lot?
Oh yeah, and I had to get a surgery and when I was like 4 years old to get my earlobes removed, and because one of them, or not earlobes, but the what is it called?
Tubes?
The tube, you know how you have tubes, one of them went in, so I had to get a surgery, and that was very traumatic to me because the doctor was like trying to get my blood, and my dad tells me this story all the time, how I looked into his eyes and I was so scared because they were doing it wrong, and he felt so sorry for me as a father. So that was my bondage with my dad, and that's why I feel like I have such a bondage with him from that experience when I was
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah. And he was that safe zone in that.
He was that safe zone that I had and has always been since I'm now 32 years old.
Yeah. I'm similar with like even my mom. She was a nurse, so she was always, even though she was like frustrated and hard, she still had the big healing part that she'd like lean into that with. But also similar.
With the ears, you were saying it's arguing though?
Arguing. My son was like, our house was a war zone when I was married. And my son kept getting ear infection after ear infection after ear infection. We were living in Northern California, and I had a doctor finally show me that one You Can Heal Your Life book. And I looked into it and I said ear infections, and it says like arguing. Let me read it to you specifically. But I was like, for me, I was like, oh my God, it kind of like made me a little sick to my stomach because I was like, I'm causing this. I'm like part of this, but like there was an awareness. So anger, not wanting to hear, too much turmoil, literally parents arguing, which is such a trip, right?
That is.
Yeah. And I was born like 18 months after my older sister, which is like probably when they were probably fighting all the time or something.
Yep. That's my boys. I think they're about 13 or 14 months apart.
So Ileana has always had like really bad bladder issues ever since
Anger.
she was.
Yep. Being pissed off, literally.
This is totally my purpose to stop this trend.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have so much like passion for this. I'm like, I am not allowing this anymore.
Yep.
I love it.
That's how I
That's
feel
how
too.
I feel too.
And I'll be damned if like I'm gonna pass it on. Like this is something like my kids have already taken on a lot, but like my hope and prayer is that they'll come to like be receptive to some of the seeds that I planted also in them to heal, and that also whatever I feel, I hope that trickles down to them, and it gives me a lot of motivation to do it for sure. The thing about it also is like, even if we have this understanding, it doesn't guarantee you that the people in your family are going to understand that either. It's something, I try to talk to my family about. It's not always something that's received, but I'm happy to do the work, and I'm happy to have the information for myself and for future generations. And, but it has been helpful for me to understand that too. Like, I'm not always like, where the hell did this come from? It's like, oh, okay, well, the torch was passed. So now I can have that understanding too and be like, I'm just going to lean into doing the work,
It actually happened with my sister last September when she had her baby. Her hormones were so anxious because my mom was upset about something with my dad bringing his new partner to see the baby. So my sister had to actually get a C-section because she was like something about her hormones. And so I think my mom's emotional trauma caused my sister to have a C-section, which made me so angry because I knew exactly what was happening, but yet no one in my family can kind of relate with the fact that my mom is the toxic person doing this to our whole family.
Yeah.
So I'm just sharing that because I experienced that recently, and I like whenever I have a baby, I just need to make sure I'm not allowing any of that toxic or like trauma in my body so that I don't push that into my baby.
Totally. And I think too, it's
Absolutely.
important. It just gives us the awareness to also be like, I need to be really supported during my pregnancy. Like,
Mhm.
this is something I wish we would talk about more is, and I think women are having these conversations ourselves now, but maybe not like, you know, doctors and such. But if we can keep ourselves in this healthy, happy, enjoyable state of being pregnant and like be supported, then that translates to the fetus and that translates to that soul and that translates to how they come into the world. So I always think about that too, like how important it is to really be cared for when we're pregnant. You know, our thoughts, what we're eating, what we're allowing into our psyche, who we allow around us, and all of these things, you know.
Yeah, she was even like, I was so overweight when I first got pregnant. I wish I had, you know, gotten more physically healthy. And I was like, you
Mhm.
gotta be, you know, that's the thing. You can't be a perfect mother, but
Exactly.
you gotta be responsible for that.
Yeah. And thank goodness too, like we are learning this information because like I know, you know, a lot of generations before me didn't have it. So it's like, okay, I do have it. So thank goodness. Let me do the work. I'm happy to do the work. I hope that it translates into my DNA and my genetics and that hopefully future generations can benefit from the work I do as well. And all of you, you know.
Yeah, I have a big DNA. It's really DNA, right?
Yeah.
Crazy stories through women through the generations too. I was brought up by my grandmother. My mother was brought up by her grandmother. Her mother was brought up by her grandmother. Back. All the women have died in their 60s except my mom, who's in her 80s and smokes 2 packs a day. Who knows? So, you know, I grew up without a mom and a dad, and that's like 4 or 5 generations of women like that. And I said, okay, the buck
Wow.
stops there. So I never wanted to bring a child into the world unless I had a pretty stable relationship and environment. So I never had children. Now it's too late. So,
Yeah.
but I've done a lot of healing for everybody behind me, you know,
What a
and now
beautiful
it's
gift.
just healing with my mom. And my mom had 4 children, gave them all away.
Wow.
One she doesn't even remember giving birth to.
Wow.
So through my genealogy research and my DNA testing, I've brought the family back together. So I grew up an only child. Now I have 2 half brothers, one from my dad, who I never knew, and
Wow.
and then 3 half sisters. So I've met them all at
Oh my
cousins.
gosh.
It's
Wow.
crazy.
You should feel so proud of yourself,
I
though.
know.
You should feel so proud of yourself.
Seriously. That's so
Thank-
beautiful that you've
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because we all met as adults, so I don't have a brother-sister relationship or
Right.
sister-sister. Only one of my sisters I'm really close with, and we're all a fucking mess. you
Yeah.
know? I mean,
For
I
sure.
you know, I've done a lot of work, but when I look at my 5 siblings, I have half siblings now, and you know, everybody's having struggles and their
Wow.
stuff from their parents. I met my father twice. Both times he denied being my father.
Ugh.
So I finally
Oh.
proved it with DNA testing. He died in his 50s, so I never, you know, had a relationship with him. So yeah, and they say that say, you know, your 5th great grandmother was afraid of spiders, you could be too.
Right.
It really translates through our DNA. It's amazing.
Totally.
But like you said, we can change that for
Mhm.
you know, ourselves and generations to come and do the healing for a lot of people, whether they understand it or not. I mean, it's like a triangle, you know, if one side changes, the other 2 do too,
Yes.
even if
Yes.
we don't participate in the healing.
Yep.
or the trauma work or anything like that. So yeah, I
Yes.
have my share of crazy family stories.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you
Well,
for
of
sharing
course,
that.
of course, I'm the messenger. So everybody's like, say what? Like, don't shoot me. I'm just the messenger. I found out
Right.
my grandfather deserted his wife and child in Scotland, moved to Detroit, met my grandmother, changed his name, his age, married her. She was 18 and he was 36.
Wow.
I found this out and my family
Yeah.
were like, are
How
you
did you
kidding?
find this
That's
out?
impossible. Because
did
I
you-
always, I knew something wasn't right my whole life. He looked way older than he said he was. He died when I was 6. So I started digging and I'm really good at research. And I found his war records where he would, like the National Archives in England, Scotland, they have his war records. And they're like, this is weird. We don't know who this guy is. We don't have anybody by that name. And then I finally went to a genealogist in a little village up in northern Scotland where he lived, and he helped me find his birth certificate, where he was born illegitimate and raised by his grandfather. It's
Wow.
going low. Yeah, and so when he applied for his pension, he wrote from Montreal. I'm from Montreal, by the way. I'm Canadian originally. So he wrote to them from Montreal saying, oh, this is my new name. And bingo, okay, there's the guy's name. And then I found his living grandchildren, sons in Scotland, who never knew what happened to their grandfather. He just disappeared. And now I filled them in to what what happened to him. And it was crazy stuff.
Wow. That's so crazy.
Yeah. So everyone didn't know. And here I have to tell his grandchildren and my mother and my uncle, his children, that he did this.
Oh my gosh, Deborah.
Just he was
You're
an
like a
awesome.
little angel here.
Yeah.
You know, seriously.
Well, I grew up an only child and I've spent so much time alone in my life that family was important to me. So I tried to connect everybody, but I did my work and now it's up to them to establish their own relationships. I can't
Yeah.
continue to, call me up. What'd this person say? How's that? I'm like, why don't you call them and ask them?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not the mediator here.
You're like, I'm busy changing our DNA.
Voila.
I can't do it all.
And my last radical forgiveness is with my mom, to forgive her. I've forgiven her, but I had to really get her out of my life to heal. And now I can come back and look at her as just an old lady who's alone and probably really depressed and sad and lonely, even
Right.
though she has 4 children. She doesn't have a relationship with any of them. She isn't
Right.
capable. So
Right.
I can still, because now my expectations from her are 0. I feel much
Exactly.
better.
Yeah.
This is an individual that has her own healing that she's not doing, probably never will, but
Right.
it's okay. I just wish her well and
Absolutely.
That's how I feel about my mother too, Deborah. It's really hard.
I used to,
it is hard because one person, in your life, you think, okay, I can get what I need from as far as, mother dog. It doesn't happen. It's, oh my God.
It's
Really
so
messes
interesting
with your head.
because
Like,
I
what's
think,
wrong with me? Why doesn't she love me?
Yeah.
Not that at all.
right. No, but it feels that way, especially when we're children and we don't understand things. And then that wound is the wound that gets carried forward.
Oh yeah.
We can't explain
mean-
that to a child,
No, I'm 6 years old sitting on the steps with my little bag and my gloves and my pretty hat and my clothes. My grandmother dressed me all up, waiting for my mom to come. I haven't seen her in months to take me to the zoo, and she never shows up.
Ugh.
2-3 months later, she'll call. Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to be there. So right from the time I was a little kid, my grandmother told me, your mom cares more about her friends than she does her family. Don't let her hurt you. So she told me, but I was just defending my mom. Oh, my mom, don't say bad things about my mom. But as I grew up, I realized what she was trying to tell me to protect me from that hurt, which she experienced with her mom experienced with her mom, and her mom 5 generations. So
Yeah.
cleared that.
Yeah, yeah,
The problem I have is how you don't get like upset or angry that they didn't do the work to fix their issues.
yeah. You know, for me, the compassion that I feel like I've had to have for like my family is that I feel like these conversations and this information is also so new. You know, like when my mom was having her trauma, like her mom was Hispanic, they were poor, they were Catholic. And I remember my mom tried to leave my dad because he was an alcoholic abuser. And my mom went to her mom and she said, "What did you do to anger your husband? You better go home and fix this right now." And like, I remember when my mom shared some of like her truths with me and was vulnerable, it really helped me have, like the compassion too, to see like my mom was surviving, like literally. And I think too, in the past, a lot of the times what people would do if people were crazy, and it was usually women before men, but they would be institutionalized and they would be given shock therapy and they were called crazy. And so like a lot of this conversation hasn't even been safe or normal to be talking about or having until I feel like, you know, a little bit further along in the future. And so it's not to give them a pass, but for me, it gave me a little bit more compassion, understanding that like maybe we do as best as we can with what we know at the time, you know, and maybe if my mom had learned some of these things, she would have approached things differently, or maybe had she been supported differently, she could have gotten out of some of these situations. And so for me, I had like a little bit of compassion with that, and same with my dad. I realized that he came from an extremely abusive, neglectful family. And so it gave me a little bit of understanding to why they were the way they were. But I wish that somebody would have given them some of the tools that I have now. So, you know, sometimes that can give us a little compassion for them. But the thing is too, sometimes we get past the place where we're even willing to do the work. And so like, it's really, really commendable anytime any of us step into doing work, you know, like Deborah, it's such a beautiful, pivotal, amazing, magical thing. I think that you've been able to give this gift to your family that you don't even get to have experience with, but they will benefit from the work that you have done, you know. It's like a gift that we offer
Yeah,
with extreme love. But
you know, yeah, I do. I have a tree with 10,000 people on Ancestry.com, and it's public. Anybody in my family and all the photos that I could find, anybody can find their roots through my tree. So I feel like that's my gift to the family. Since I don't have children to carry my legacy forward, at least there's something that they can tap into. And
that
Do
and
that ancestry thing.
yeah,
it's very,
that and Deborah, you're such I like just my take on you and like your energy. I feel like you're such like an advanced soul. Like I feel like, you know, your soul came here and did work that was like amazing work that like, you know, even though it's something that's under the surface and we can't always see it, that ripple effect is beyond your family a tree, in my opinion. I think that any people that are born from that DNA lineage will have the benefit of what you've been able to transmute with your wisdom and your knowledge and your effort and your strength. So I just hope that you also really see that yourself through those eyes, you know? And another thing that I just wanted to also tell you, Deborah, is like, as I've been watching your videos and stuff too, I feel like you don't just have that effect on like your family and like the people who didn't get to know you, but I have the sense that you're that energy in your community and the people that you come into contact with. So I just feel like for sure, I hope that you're always giving yourself like enough credit for the amazing work that you've done on yourself and that you continue to share with the people around you. So I already see that ripple effect, and I hope that you know that the work that you've done is causing that out in the world. So
thank you.
yes.
And it makes me feel good too.
Absolutely.
a-
Like
Yeah.
you said on one of the first days, like doing things for others, right? Like that's part of the medicine.
Yeah, I feel it. Feeling appreciated is huge for me. I mean, my mother didn't appreciate me. My husband didn't appreciate me. They're two
Right.
of the most. I was like, oh my God. So I feel a lot better now. More of who I am.
Mhm.
And I see that, my mom, my husband, they both have personality disorders, mental illness.
Mhm.
They're My husband was a borderline personality disorder alcoholic.
Mhm. Mhm.
So off the wall. My mom is a total narcissist. So these people, they're doing their best. It really sucks. Their best sucks. But so there's that too, it's not just like they're lazy or they don't get it or they didn't have the opportunity. Sometimes they're physically unable
Yeah.
to
So true.
Yep.
do anything.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And also I think too, it's like we're saying like which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like the trauma or the mental illness. Like it's like, well, where did that start? Was it the mental illness caused the trauma or the trauma caused the mental illness at this point too? So, letting us have that just awareness that I also think that when we have trauma and we carry this, a lot of the times we're really tired. And I want to reiterate that we can't always see all the amazing transformation that's going on internally when we're working through these things. I wish we could, but it's like if you cut your arm and the wound heals, you get to witness that and you're like very proud. And it's like, oh, thank goodness, my arm is better, but we can't see that transformation that's happening internally while we're doing all this work. But I just want you guys to know, like, I see that in all three of you. I see you guys doing the work. I already see the alchemy and the transformation that's taken place. And not only that, but the ripple effect that it has in our families, Tammy with you, with your daughters, and Audrey with you, with your family. It's like you're the ones that came in to change this and to raise awareness. And now you've taken on this like teacher role, right? And the best way that we teach people around us is to embody the change. Like people will listen to a lot less of what we say, but they will watch us and they watch what we do. They watch the behaviors that we have, and then they get permission to also embody that. And so I always think that the best way that we cultivate change in the world is to become the change. I see that in all three of you. So I hope you're always giving yourselves enough credit and know that somebody sees you as the warriors that you've had to be and that you are today. And I thank you guys for doing the work of working through the trauma. I know it's not easy.
My problem that I experience with my family not seeing my embodiment is they relate it to Costa Rica because that's where I went to do all this work. And so they're like, oh, you lost all that weight because you were living in the jungle. Oh, you were to, Puerto Vita land or whatever. No, I'm doing the work and trying to bring it back here to this, America. And so I think that's my problem right now is finding a way to embody that here.
Yeah, it's always challenging. And I think what it is giving ourselves like the radical permission to embody it without anybody's judgment or awareness. It's just like we're moving forward on that path. If you want to watch the race and you want to watch me get to that finish line and you're inspired by it, then awesome. But like, it's not my job to carry you guys to the finish line. And I think that's something that has to be noted. I always say that when we're dealing with trauma, sometimes it's like we're treading water. Like it's a lot of work. Like we get really tired from doing that. And how can we possibly start to take on more weight when we're just treading water? It's like it will drown, So also knowing our limits, knowing our boundaries, knowing when we've had enough, when we need to remove ourselves, when we need to do more self-care. All of this is really important for dealing with trauma because it is a lot of work. We can't always see what's being done. Communication and boundaries are huge also for self-care. It's something I've really had to work on to not be reactive, like the trauma would like me to be in situations, but to really firmly communicate my needs and my boundaries. Because it's not about anyone else, it's about me, and I'm the only one who can take care of me. Everyone else has themselves to take care of. And so again, like, I can't save you, but I can inspire you. And so I hope that we all can move in that direction, right? Like, we don't want to keep picking up people to try and save them, but we can inspire them to change themselves. So for me, it's like I try not to give unsolicited advice, but if somebody asks me to show them the way, I'm all in, you know? And so that can be some way that we bring that energy into our relationships also. It's like, you know, I can't save you, I can inspire you, I can show you the way, I can hold space for you, but if it causes me to drown, then not going to be something that's beneficial for me. So I might have to set a boundary.
Another thing, people calling themselves healers is, I don't know, because unless you're a doctor, I think people heal themselves.
Absolutely.
You can't heal someone. You give them the tools,
Yes.
the inspiration, the support,
That's
all
how
the
you
stuff.
there's authenticity there, in my opinion. Right?
They have to take that on. The doing is up to them. I'm not a miracle worker, put my hand on someone and heal them, even with Reiki. I mean,
Yeah.
It's them. So
Right.
people who are out there, oh, I'm this great healer. I'm kind of like, I think they're missing the point here. It's not about you and maybe you're really good at helping people heal themselves. That's different. That's another direction.
Ego.
Mhm.
It's very egotistical, I think, when we come into those places of thinking that we are, you know, able to save people like that. I think it's dangerous too. And
Yeah, it reminds me of put your hand on the television and pray to God.
Yeah,
And he'll heal you kind of
I'm
day.
gonna
You
save
know what
you.
I mean? Or those, guys, they touch the person's head and now all of a sudden they're miraculously cured.
It reminds me of the saying, like, teach a man to fish, feed him forever, give a man a fish, feed him for the day. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, we need to be teaching people how to fish. Like, I don't want to just feed you for the night. I want you to know how to feed yourself. That's the healing. You know, it doesn't make me a healer, but a facilitator or someone that might show you the way, a way shower, you know? It could be like someone who's just gonna connect the map or hand you a map, but in my experience, yes, nobody can do the work for us. And it's kind of dangerous when we start looking outside of ourselves too for that medicine. I think it's more important that we know that we have everything inside ourselves to heal ourselves. That's the power and the strength that's going to be required to do the work too. So if we're constantly going to a shaman, a healer, and we're looking for them to fix us, even a doctor, if you're thinking about them handing you a pill or something and that it's going to make everything all better, I've got news for you. That's never going to happen with trauma. You know, it's something that everyone has to do the work for themselves to grow. And so that was a hard lesson I had to learn, because when I was younger, I wanted to help everybody, wanted to save everybody. I would have carried them on my back if I could. And I had to get to the point where I said, you know what, I can't save you and me, but I can save me. And once I find out how I'm going to cross that bridge, I'll give you the map, you know? So that's always like what I hope we can facilitate for other people too, is just like, hey, this is what worked for me. Can I share it with you? And I really hope that it does work for you, you know, and I can hold space for you also, but I can't do the work for you. It's like that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So I think there's some peace in that also for me personally, you know. I don't have to go save the world. You know that I'm doing my fair share just by creating the change within myself. So that's another piece of the puzzle that I think is really important.
And
I love
self-help industry is like a $1 zillion industry, right? So some
Totally.
people are just stuck in that loop. Read this, take that course, go to this therapist, this shaman, read that book.
Yes, yes.
They just stuck there. Like, where's the next, like, out? Where's the out? Where's the,
Okay. Where's the I no longer need to pay you in order to feel good?
Yeah.
When is it I can just cultivate this within myself and do the work myself? I have the tools myself, right? Because not everybody has money to step into these healing spaces. Not everybody has access to healthcare. Not everybody has access to counselors and, doctors and things like that too. And the good news is everything that we're learning now, we can do it for free. So if we can teach people, then we've armed them with the tools that they need to get through this, What were you gonna say, Audrey?
I just wanted that fish analogy that you had mentioned. I really liked it. If you could write it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good one. I remember it was really sobering for me. Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. No, so, like I kind of have a similar experience, Deborah. Like I'm the oldest and my mom had 6 of us. And there was one before me that she aborted. And I don't know my other siblings. I probably never will. So, I don't.
Again,
you
like,
know,
instead of
you can do a DNA test now, and there's a zillion people out there who've done it.
Yeah.
I found all my siblings just from people doing DNA tests in my family. So there is hope. And I'll say this, that community that works with DNA and genealogy are extremely helpful, kind people. They will show you how to do it, where to look, how to talk to people, how to go about it. So you might want to look at some of the communities, even on Facebook, there are quite a few that can help you interpret, because DNA is very complex, but they can simplify it to say like a very distant relative you match with. You got to figure out through their tree where your connection is and stuff. So there's hope for that. You can maybe reconnect family.
It's crazy. My partner, Tim, did the DNA thing. Actually, he didn't do it initially. Someone did it and his dad was there. They were able to figure out that they found Tim. His father had died, so they were trying to find their dad. But Tim ended up finding out he has 2 siblings he never ever knew about after he did the DNA test. So like his dad never told him, but he had 2 other children. So it was like life change. This DNA like been, like able to, I think, bring a lot of people closer together.
It is totally incredible. Sorry, the amount of people doing these DNA tests, how many secrets there were from previous generations, and it's just blowing people's minds, finding all kinds of relatives and siblings, and then the person who's still alive, you're like, hey, you lied to me. It's incredible. It's
Which one did you use? The ancestry.com? Which one specifically did you use?
Well, they just have a basic DNA test there. There's also 23andMe.
Which one would be better in your opinion?
I've done all the ancestry ones because it's linked right to the site, so it's easier, and you can upload your results to 23andMe and MyHeritage and GED Match. So once you have those, you can download the results and upload them to all these different sites and see if you match anybody there as well. And people
start with ancestral.
Ancestry.com. It's like under $100, I think, and there's sales sometimes during the year. But it's just astounding to me the amount of people. Like I read through this stuff, all the time, see if I can help people find their families and the emotional stuff that, oh my God, And then you find your mom. Maybe she doesn't even want to know you.
Right.
So it's just like all over the map. It's really incredible.
There's this documentary that I put in the chat, but it's called Twinsters. So this is a really cool story, but it's about twins who were born at birth. They were both put up for adoption. They went to separate families. They never knew about each other. No one ever told them that they were a twin, and they found each other. And there's like several stories of this. They didn't
I
find
love that.
using like match.com or like, you know, the DNA thing. They found each other like organically. And so like it's such a beautiful story, but also you see not only them like coming together as like twins and siblings, but you get to hear the hard stories of like how their parents came to the point where they did put them up for adoption. And so I don't know, it was just a beautiful story for the whole package, but I highly recommend that one. It's really like heartfelt. I remember just like crying in a really good way through it. It's another one of those like documentaries where you're just like mind blown, but like in a good way. So another one to watch.
Tammy, did you want to finish telling what you wanted to express?
I don't know if I can. It's just kind of wild. I didn't think that this really bothered me so bad.
I think you've had to be so strong, you know, for so long that like we can't even deal with some things when we're just trying to survive day to day, you know. I think you've been warrioring for a long, long time, you know, and you had to be strong, especially because you had two daughters of your own.
Yeah.
You know, so
Mhm.
is to like feel like we can't be worrying through all the hard things that we have to get through to feel as soft as we actually feel until
Yeah.
we're like in a safe place. And I feel
Right.
like safe place now. And so it's like all the stuff that you had to push behind you to survive can come up and out.
Yeah. So when my mom had all of us, we all got taken away from the state of California because of like really bad abuse and neglect. And I was found tied to a chair with like feces and there's all kinds of stuff. And my sisters were locked in bedrooms. And my dad got custody of me because I was his only child. And so he couldn't adopt my sisters. And so I grew up without them. And I mean, it's always been in the back of my mind, you know, and like my cousin Mitch was a private investigator, but he shot himself when I was 24. And so my mom was like waiting until all of them were 18 to find them, which I thought was stupid. I'm like, why would you wait? You know, like, why wouldn't you have taken advantage of like what we had then, you know? And so, but at the same time, like, I feel like my mom's very blessed to have me and my kids in her life. And so when we didn't have a good relationship, like I would tell her that, like, you have us right here and you don't take advantage of it, you know, like you're never going to know your other children, but you have me for whatever reason that is, you know? And so it's like she was a bad mom and it's like she was a worse grandmother. And then it's like now we're in this like different dynamic where she's like my mom and like my mom that I've never had and like and she's a grandma. And so it's like it's really beautiful because like we haven't always had that. And I didn't grow up with my mom, I grew up with my dad. And so it's just really cool to see all the different things. And I really didn't realize how much this affected me until you started talking, Deborah. So thank you. I really needed to release that.
You know, if you decide to do the DNA test and you need some help figuring it out, it's my pleasure to assist you with that. If I can help in any way to find your family for you.
Okay.
I'm a really good forensic detective because I grew in up in a house full of lies. So
Yeah.
really good at detecting lies and finding the truth. You know, it's like my survival skill.
Yeah,
So
no, I love
now I
that.
can use it for something positive. You know?
Yeah.
I think the universe aligned us all together for a reason. Like you guys are both moms, or all three of you are moms, and I'm hurting with that. And then also the DNA and all of this stuff I really want to do myself as well. So it all makes sense.
Yeah,
So divine.
it really is.
I was telling Cami, also when we were doing the pigeon, like I felt like I could feel from all three of you that you had like the same root to the same wound of like a mother wound also. And like, so I was like, I even told Court the other day, I was like, this was the divine cuts. Like it was very, like, I trust the universe. I always say that, like that I, like another woman who dropped out last minute. And I know her and I know that she wasn't supposed to be a part of this group because of the energy was just different. And so it's like so divine that it's the three of you, you know, like I just feel like the universe brought us all together to have and share this space and time with each other. I can't thank you guys enough.
Thank you. You're awesome.
Mhm.
Guys. Warriors, warriors, warriors,
Yes, that are
warriors.
breaking generational.
Versus
Curses.
generational
Yes.
trauma, generational.
Yes.
So it can be a lot, and also too, hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, it also gives us compassion for our communities too, you know. Living in New Mexico, we have a huge Native American culture, and I can see the amount of trauma that's taken place in those communities, you know, and all the other different communities that have had generational and mass trauma that they're trying to heal from, you know, with the Black Lives.
My sister getting into a family of Black people, African American, has been a huge also hardship for myself the past couple of years because we're bringing in that side of things to our family as well. So it's just a whole nother level of speaking certain words around my sister and her side of the family, because if I say something that might be disrespected in the Black community, I have to be careful for that because I am not, you know, Black. So I need to understand the trauma that my sister's husband has been through and his entire family, which brings into my nephew as an aunt. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes,
it's just extra information and stuff I'm trying to understand as well.
totally. I think, you know, as long as like it always like arms us with compassion. It's like understanding can root us in compassion. For me, it's like if I can understand things, then I can be compassionate towards it. So that's kind of like the more information I have, the better I feel about being able to step into those places. You know, for a long time, I think I was kind of in a place where I'm like, well, we all have trauma and we're all healing from trauma. But like, you know, when we understand that these were some major, major trauma, like on a genocidal level, that these have great effects on these demographics for years and years and years and years and years. It helped me also just to have that even more compassion for these groups of people that are moving through these things too. And, you know, my family does have Jewish roots also, Catholic and Jewish, ironically. And so knowing also that I've had some of this come down through our family, that as well. So just all of it, you know, and my mom also has Native American in her also. So it's like bringing in these two demographics for her DNA gave me also compassion for what her family had been through for, you know, hundreds of years before too. So again, just understanding leads to compassion. So we can have compassion for ourselves. We can have compassion for our communities as we all attempt to heal these crazy things that happen in life. And hopefully we get to the point where we can all become so self-aware that we don't have to have as much trauma happening, you know. We all learn this information, or it's information that's readily available and becomes normalized, then hopefully we can all have insight into how to control ourselves and grow ourselves, heal ourselves. And that will also ripple out into these big communities and demographics. So talking about that, also healing lineages, right, backwards. We're going to be talking about shamanic journeys. So on page 102, we're going to get into shamanic journey. And the reason that I like this is something that I learned in my Budindismo practitioner training. And it's something that we do because again, we believe that even if we have wounds from the past, that we can go back and offer healing to those spaces now. And so that's always my hope. We can do inner child meditations. There's one that's done, I know, in Quartz 200 hour. I don't know if you guys did it, but you'll get to experience it.
That's
But
really
it's
cool. I
the
need that in my life.
Archangel inner child healing. And if you guys didn't do it, I'll pop it in the chat too, or if you just feel like doing it again. It's a really good one. But what it does is it guides you back to your childhood. And it has you pick up the pain and the joy. And then it kind of has you be the parent that you needed at the time. So like you kind of talk to your inner child and you give them some healing as your higher self. And then, you know, that healing translates because again, there's no space and time, like when we really come into like that big truth. So we can go back and heal our inner
You know,
child.
I was actually doing that the other night, like when I was trying to cry, I kept telling myself like, I'm like, this little girl inside of you, it's okay. Like, it's okay to cry. Like, it's okay to let it out. You know, like, I love you. You're safe. And I was just like hugging myself. And then I finally started crying. You know, so like sometimes we really do need to do that for ourselves and like really talk to that little girl and like tell that little girl that it's okay and like you're safe. And so, yeah, I totally resonate with that a lot.
I think sometimes it's always surprising what we can find in those spaces too. You know, for me, it was like I didn't realize I had felt alone since I was a little.
Oh, yeah.
Like the trauma can be isolating. And so, you know, to go back and tell my little girl, like, you're not alone. I'm here with you and I'm helping you carry this. And I'll always be with you, helping you carry this. And don't worry, I'm in the future now and we bossed up and we handled this stuff and we went through it, and I want to help you still feel more comfortable as a child, you know. And I remember having things in my childhood, like where I would sit under a tree and I felt like, you know, there was this tree in my backyard and I really felt like I connected to this space. But I also feel like there was something with me going back to my childhood and providing healing in that space and time. For my inner child. And I feel like there's almost this awareness of like where and when that happened. But I did take the time as an adult to go back and do that work. And so I really truly believe in this with all my heart, that we can go back doing these meditations, these shamanic journeys, if we want to call them that. And we can offer the healing and love to our inner child that we wish we would have had at the moment. We can be friends to ourselves that we wish we had. And offer that love and compassion and strength to our little selves. You know?
Yeah. And it's okay.
Yes. And it can have a pivotal effect, you know, it can have a really profound effect. So let's talk about it. What is the shamanic journey or soul flight? In shamanic practice, it is believed that part of the soul is free to leave the body. There are various times the soul might leave the body, during dreaming or to protect the soul from trauma. See soul retrieval. So we'll talk about that next. When a shaman is initiated onto the shamanic path, they usually learn how to send their soul forth intentionally on soul flight, which is commonly called a journey or the shamanic journey. In early shamanic societies, many shamans were initiated because of having a near-death experience. Death being an experience when all of your soul leaves the body. The near-death experience is thought to teach an individual to travel with the soul. So this is also something like after people have near-death experiences, a lot of the times they come back with like this profound information or these gifts. A lot of the times, sometimes they turn on those senses again. But this is why, is a lot of the times it's thought that we've made a journey at some point during those near-death experiences and learned something. When a person journeys, the soul leaves the body and may travel to a spiritual aspect of places on earth, or may go within the earth or above. In certain societies, there are destinations that are peculiar to the culture. There are also destinations that appear to be the same for many different cultures, despite the separation of these cultures by nature and geographic location. The map of these common destinations is referred to as a cosmology. Terms such as upper, lower, and middle world are used to divide the cosmology, but there are wide varieties of destinations. So thinking about it as it's a place that we go outside of space and time. And so there are certain places that are in the earth, like they're talking about, pyramids have been built all over the world. And these societies had no way of communicating that these things were all happening about the same time. And so we can see that we don't necessarily need a train or a car or a plane or a boat to travel. Maybe these societies were even communicating astrally or through meditation or through their shamanic journey too. So how does one do a journey? The shamanic journey occurs by shifting awareness or consciousness in order to allow a part of your soul to leave the body. There's a drum or a rattle that is frequently used, and the slow repetitive rhythm shifts the individual's rhythm so that he or she can journey, just the way a soothing song can help someone achieve a calmer state. The rhythm of the drum puts you in the right state to journey, and the drum beat is very close to the frequency that is measured from the earth and has proved effective for the majority of people. The journey is then achieved by a person's intent. The person intends to leave, and so she does. How you get the soul to leave is tough to describe. Try to describe walking. It is difficult to put it into words and how you get your legs to move. The same is true with journey, other than we're being guided into these spaces. So what is the journey for? Journeying, like meditation, is a tool for spiritual growth. It is also a tool that can be used for healing, to obtaining information, and also in working through psychological issues. When someone goes on a journey, they are able to communicate on a spiritual level. So journeyers can go and visit guardian spirits. They can go and visit spirits of the land. During a journey, an individual can also examine the health of their body or another's body. And the journey can also be used to discover things about the physical world. For instance, a journeyer might have an experience of being a fish in a stream or running like a deer over the land. The journey differs from a dream because the individual is able to direct the journey and because he or she learns unexpected things. For instance, in a dream, running like a deer, you may experience speed, but in a journey, you will feel how the muscles of the deer's legs feel as it runs. Running as a zebra, you may realize with surprise how much of the animal's power is coming from its back legs. In the real world, an experience brings unexpected things. You learn something you didn't know before journeying. Journeying is much like an experience in the real world because of these types of unexpected discoveries. So psychologically, some people use the journey to work through emotional issues. They may confront a deceased or living relative about past abuse. The journey provides a safe environment to express anger or to work through the grief. And the shamanic journey provides a tool for spiritual growth because the individual can seek out evolved spiritual teachers. The messages given often have an unexpected depth of meaning. Journeyers often report that their journeys add up to a deeper spiritual teaching because one journey has built on to another. And sometimes going back to read a journal of your journeys, you see that you were walking a path of deep learning. Journey messages will often come in the form of symbols, which have depth that only becomes clear over time. And so you guys might find that when you do the shamanic journey for your cacao thing tomorrow. And just the other thing I want to say before we get through this is that I'm going to put in the shamanic drum portion of the meditation for tomorrow separately. So if you want to play the shamanic drum, you'll have it to hear in the background while you're hearing me guide the shamanic journey. But I wasn't able to put the drum beat in the background this morning as I was using it to record. Okay, so destination and purpose. The places one will journey to will vary. Some will be much like the geography seen on Earth with mountains, trees, and valleys, and some places are airy like the sky or feel very energetic or peaceful. A journey destination can be anything because the geography is not bound by rules of gravity, but rather the rules of energy. And the purposes and tasks of the shaman or shamanic journeyer will sometimes determine what place will be visited. Purposes can include healing oneself or another, spiritual growth, enjoyment, connection with guardian spirits, learning, religious growth, and many other things, because journeying is a diverse tool. Now, some people may journey into smaller dimensions, such as between the molecules of water or into the cells of the body. Some explore very little of the cosmology, only going to one or two specific places. Another journeyer may visit many different places or travel very large distances. When the journeyer becomes skilled and starts taking very long journeys, there can be risk of not returning. The risk is mitigated by doing such lengthy or long distance journeys with a partner who knows a key word which will call the journeyer back. This is not usually an issue for the beginning journeyer and generally comes with certain advanced work.
So that's kind of like a regression.
Yes, and so this is another type of healing that we can do. Like it talks about soul retrieval also, or past life regression. Both of these would be a type of shamanic journey. And so soul retrieval is when we experience trauma in our life. Like it said, sometimes a piece of the soul goes away to survive. It's like a piece of the puzzle. This is something that I personally experienced through my own. And I think anytime someone dissociates, we can guess that probably a part of them has left the body in order to survive. That's kind of dissociation. And so when dissociation happens with trauma, we can do a soul retrieval to call back these parts of ourselves. So this is another thing that you can start to guide in a meditation or a journey with people, is you can start to call back all pieces of themselves. And sometimes I'll even enter this like into meditations where I just say, I call back all pieces of myself now, and I release pieces of others that I've picked up along my journey. But we can really go in depth to where we invite these parts of people who have had trauma back into their bodies, back into their self, and it can help them to feel stronger. It can help them to feel whole. But these parts were pushed away until we had the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to incorporate and bring them back in so that we can heal. So it's really a self-preservation tool. It's very wise of us and our bodies and our spirits to be able to send those parts of us away. It's something that we do to survive. And past life regressions are also really helpful if we feel like we're carrying forward trauma from past lives as well, which is another thing that can also happen. And sometimes that's worth exploring. Same thing with like our births. You know, I was telling you guys that I worked with someone doing that as well for me, but I went back and I did like a regression to my birth and being born and being able to heal what was going on in that space and time with my soul. And so I really, really love shamanic journeys for this. This is something that you guys as meditation practitioners can absolutely practice. It's not something that you need to be necessarily like indoctrined into. So please feel comfortable with that. And I'll also link a couple shamanic journeys into the chat so you guys have a couple samples of what they're like, because there's a lot of different types and you can get creative with them too. Just trusting your intuition to kind of guide people into sacred spaces to work on whatever their soul might need to work on. So this is a really, really beautiful way to kind of bring healing to the past. And any of us with trauma, that's usually what we need. So it's another really great tool to be able to bring into our practice. So this is shamanic journey. And then,
I'm just gonna run to the restroom real quick.
yeah, go ahead. I think I need to also. We'll just take a little 5-minute break. Remind me to talk about when.
Do that. I was not expecting all that crying. Like it became more.
It's like, no, we're not
It's like,
done yet.
no, we're not
We're
done.
not done yet.
And then like even just talking about it, you know, and like, and I was in 2 foster homes too as a child.
I
you
know.
And like one of the foster homes, like they put a bowl on the top of my head and cut my hair. And so like I have pictures with me as a little girl with like my hair being
literal
so,
bowl.
yeah, yeah. And so it's just, it's just crazy. And then like the fact that like my dad, like, like my dad had no idea that I was even in foster care. And so, because when my mom got pregnant with me, my dad left. Like he wanted nothing to do with it at all. And so, my dad happened to be in El Cajon, California at a freaking laundromat. Like, this is why, like, I think my story is so incredible. Like, it's just crazy. But like, my dad was at a laundromat in El Cajon, California, and my Aunt Dee happened to be there and recognized my dad and told my dad what was going on. And my dad literally went back to Florida, tied up whatever loose ties he needed to, and him and his girlfriend moved to California, and he went through the process to get me. Like, that's just fate. Like it was not meant for me to be in the system, like at all whatsoever, and that's the only reason why I know my mom, is because my dad kept that family tie with my grandma. And so I always knew my grandma, and I met my mom when I was 9. And then I never lived with her until I was 13. And so, and then that's when I played the back and forth between my mom and my dad, because I could, and they totally let me, so.
I think this is why it's important, like I shared with you before, like to share with.
Yeah.
I think like Audrey, you talked about that a little bit.
Yeah,
too, like,
I wrote that down when she did that.
I think that's important, like part also, like for parents to be
Completely
candid with their
transparent.
children and yes, transparent to let them know. I think the reason why is like it gives insight into like why we are the way we are,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was so curious why they were getting divorced and they couldn't have an answer for me at the age of 15, and it took me 15 years to figure out that pain, and I'm still releasing that pain because they weren't able to completely tell me or have me be able to process these emotions in the healthy way. And I'm not blaming it on them. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
it could have been handled a little bit better. And Also, I think there's a lot of like things that my dad has told me since then that he didn't get to tell me before that makes sense of, why did they even get married in the first place? Why did, they should have probably never gotten married. But yeah.
And then like not having the tools themselves and to have the capability to even express those feelings,
Mm-hmm.
Especially military background.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like what they're taught.
Yeah,
right?
they're taught to just,
It's like you have to.
There's no emotions. That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's what I realized is both my parents just didn't know how to express their emotions and communicate their emotions like in a healthy way, which is why I never knew how to as a kid, which is why I held everything in my body and didn't know how to process it, and then process it through alcohol. And I would cry when I would get drunk and people would just make fun of me. And I'm like,
Yes.
I don't know why it's making me like depressed. It's because it's a depressant and I was using it for happiness. And that's what you do in college and stuff. And I also had a relationship that was alcoholic and all these things. So it's addiction and it's not good.
And it's such a symptom of trauma. It's just like we can bet that the people that are addicts have trauma. We can bet that the people that are homeless have trauma.
Yeah.
We can bet that the people who have psychological problems a lot of the times have trauma.
Yeah.
My brother is also military background. He actually still is, like, he's just getting ready to retire, but he has a lot of trauma from it. And he will literally tell me, Jen, you just need to compartmentalize that shit and move forward.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, okay, let me just talk to you for a second. Because even your verbiage of compartmentalize, I was like, that is super toxic.
Yeah.
And like my brother, God bless him, he is such a bad alcoholic. And it breaks my heart. He's so smart too. I'm like, you have to know this, but also he's been trained in military background and like law enforcement background for so long that that's his psyche. That's where he is.
Yeah. It's like ingrained.
To unravel
You
that.
can't, and it's so hard to unravel that. And that's why I can't really help my mom, because she's just engraved from her father and her whole background, and they have 8 kids. And it's just amazing. Like I have 30 cousins on that side and everyone just keeps having babies. And I'm over here like, I can't have a baby to fix the problem. So that's how I feel. And it's really painful sometimes. Yeah.
I think what helped me as a teenager to process all of my stuff, and I think this is like why I also am who I am, is like I journal. Like I wrote, like every time my dad and I had a fight, like I literally wrote down word for word what he said and what I said. Like I literally like would write everything down. And so I think because I did that, like it really helped me to process and like release all of that trauma. And so I think that's another reason why, like, even though I still have a lot of trauma, I was able to still cope with my trauma in some
For
way.
sure.
you
Man, you
know?
wouldn't be alive today.
Yeah,
if you
so
didn't
it's
have,
like, it's
you
just
know.
kind of crazy how like I intuitively as a teenager and a young child would just write. Like I'd write down all of the emotions, like everything.
Mine was in sports. I went into soccer and that was my only way. My escape was through sports and getting competitive. So then my ego kept getting like that. And so that's why I think also a trauma thing is like getting competitive.
Yeah.
Well, because then you get the reward, right? Like also when you win and when you are acknowledged and you're a good
From my parents who are like wanting me to do well in the sport, and my whole goal was to get a scholarship like in high school.
And then having their acceptance too,
we're always looking for this.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, but we have to seek acceptance from ourselves first.
Mhm.
And that was the word that I had for us today. You guys will see. Yeah. Well, acceptance and
oh yeah, the cards. All right. Well, let's
these
talk.
are really good.
They're so good.
Wim Hof.
I know. Yeah. Actually, maybe I'm gonna save that for after lunch, and now we're gonna talk mirror neurons. But remind me to tell them about it after so they can do it. So let's talk mirror neurons before we move into our lunch afterwards. Are you familiar with mirror neurons? Have you guys heard of them before? They're pretty awesome. I remember when I heard them, I was like, aha, like it was just like a moment where I was just like, everything makes sense. So mirror neurons. One of the most fundamental ways in which we learn is through observation, followed by imitation. By studying macaque monkeys and observing certain regions in the human brain, scientists discovered a class of neurons responsible for learning called mirror neurons. Now, ever since the discovery of mirror neurons, those central nervous system cells have been of great interest to neuroscientists, psychologists, and neurology specialists alike. Mirror neurons show activity both when an individual performs a particular action, as well as when they observe another person performing the same action. As such, they are thought to play a significant role in learning and in intention understanding, speech and language evolution, emotional intelligence, and empathy, and could be linked to certain neuropsychological disorders. Mirror neurons, superior temporal, the STS, and say that, biological motion, the IPL, and the IFG. So these are going to be areas that interact with the mirror neurons. So neuron types in the human body. There are two types of neurons in the nervous system: motor neurons and sensory neurons. Motor neurons are associated with the execution of a certain action. They deliver signals from the brain to an effector, such as a muscle or a cell or a secretory gland. In contrast, sensory neurons deliver signals from a receptor, such as pain or temperature receptors in the skin to appropriate regions in the central nervous system. While every organ in our body is supplied by both motor and sensory neurons, they are functionally different. Mirror neurons, however, were originally described as nervous system cells which discharged both during monkeys' active movements and when the monkey observed meaningful hand movements made by the experiment. This means that they show activity both when an action is being observed, the sensory component, and when the same action is being executed, the motor component. So the mirror neuron system. The results of human neuroimaging experiments provide strong evidence that the same mirror neuron system that was originally discovered in the macaque monkeys' promoter cortex in the area F5 is also present in human beings. And in one study, the brain activity of 21 participants was recorded while they were asked to either observe or perform a certain action themselves, either hand grasping or a particular facial expression. As a result, a number of neurons has been shown to be stimulated by both action and observation and execution. Furthermore, studies have shown that this particular class of neurons starts developing before the age of 12 months and is linked to early human development and the ability of infants to learn by imitation. This is why I always say, and they say for kids, that they listen to a lot less of what you say and a lot more of what you do.
Oh, yeah.
So mirror
They
neurons.
mimic everything.
Yeah. The significance of mirror neurons. In 2000, a known neuroscientist and author, Vilayanur Ramachandran, excuse my pronunciation, said that mirror neurons will do for psychology what DNA did for biology. While the hype has died down a little since, neuroscientists are still excited about the clinical significance of the mirror neuron system. The idea is that thanks to mirror neurons, we are able to first observe an action, what is being done, then understand the intention of that action, why is this happening, and finally to reproduce the same action in order to achieve similar results, the motor component. Both of our understanding of action and the ability to then mirror that same action is of great significance to learning, speech perception, and emotional intelligence. One argument is that since mirror neurons are responsible for both the what and the what for of a particular action, they are strongly linked to our ability to show empathy. And if we see a person crying, we must be able to identify the action, then positively correlate it with the feeling of sorrow. The mirror neuron system also teaches children to cry to show their discontent. Similar arguments have been made in favor of mirror neurons' role in language learning, and in fact, the way that our civilization has evolved over centuries. So we can see that just by being around things that we can start to also mirror them. So this lets us know too, there are those like our parents that are raising us, or the people that are around us raising us, and they have trauma. This could be another way that we're mirroring this back to them, is also through mirror neurons. And so this is, again, why I always say that with trauma, it's also important to make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with the right people as we heal. You know, because we do have these mirror neurons. And so the sum of 5 is really real. And so when we want to become something, we should surround ourselves with it, right? If we want to be healing, then we need to surround ourselves with people that are in that same kind of mentality. And if we want to repeat old habits and patterns, you know, then by keeping people that mirror the old versions of ourselves around, we can still embody some of those things. So it can be hard to change if we kind of keep people really close that are mirroring back those negative habits that maybe we developed through trauma as well. And so for me, this is just also about understanding that we can pick up things from other people. This is where the empath comes in, right? We can guess that also we're empathing. We probably have a really strong neuron system for the mirror neurons. And so we're probably mirroring back quite a bit of what we're picking up on around us. So these can be tied into empathy, into our feelings of picking up things that are maybe not ours, but that are around us. And so there's this little exercise that I have us practicing. And this was developed by, I think, also one of the scientists that is responsible for getting to know mirror neurons as well. And so this is kind of a process that we can go through to just make sure that we're feeling our own stuff and not picking up on other people's stuff. And we can kind of discern that through the practice. So what it is it's a paper ripping exercise. And so what we're going to do is we're going to check in and find something inside that might be bigger than them, something that might have a vicarious component. Find an emotional quality that's been around you for a while. It could be a piece of shame, depression, anger, a piece of something. And it could be something that you're curious about or react to or follows you around like a shadow. For use with a client or for use with our students, use the current too much situation to work with. So whatever's too much, like we're feeling too much of this. We're overwhelmed because we're feeling too fatigued, too sad, too upset, whatever that looks like. Then we're going to find something and sense into it. Inquire with curiosity, taking time to sense. Is all of this mine? Who have I been around? Maybe starts to float around. And notice as you sit with the felt sense, the body sense of this piece of something that has been following you around for some time. What is that like on your body? Is it familiar? When do you first remember feeling this something? Where were you? Do you have a sense of what is happening there? Was there someone else there with you? So understanding that, feeling that in our body, asking these questions, and then it says the piece of paper that you have represents the whole of what you are sitting with. Now take some time to sense what is and is not yours. Allow yourself from that inside place to rip the paper so that you have what is yours and what is someone else's. How much of that belongs to someone else and how much is yours? Take your time and really allow this to come from the felt sense. And then now check again. Is there more there that isn't yours? Was there a someone else? There's who's something that you might have taken on as yours. Perhaps repeat even a third time if necessary. And notice what that is like for you in there to set some of what isn't yours down and off to the side. Is there something that you would like to do with these pieces that aren't yours? Is there somewhere that you could place that? Maybe you could send it down the river or burn it, flush it down the toilets, whatever. It is normal and healthy for a child to want to be helpful. It is a helpful and precious family thing to do, to want to rescue or fix or take on someone else's stuff. And it is good and helpful to set that down now. So this is a practice, kind of like our little worksheet that I want you guys to know that you can come to, especially when we're dealing with family dynamics. Sometimes when I go back to visit, I stay in my parents' house, and this is something I have to kind of check in with, especially if I'm really in the space where I'm like immersed in that energy. I'm thinking, Audrey, this is going to be really good for you, being that you're dealing with a lot of family stuff right now too. But really identifying like how much of what I'm carrying around right now is actually mine. And like really realizing and relinquishing ourselves from having to carry around other people's traumas and burdens and stress and anxiety as well. And so sometimes when we're first stepping into this, we don't even know that we're doing this, right? Like it's happening probably very automatically until we stop and pause and ask ourselves, is this really mine? You know, I have to do this quite a bit through a teacher training. Like when I go home, waking up in the mornings, I'm tapping into this energy. And of course, after spending 2.5 weeks like immersed together, we all start to have those mirror neurons and have these kind of effects where we're holding space for each other. And it's wonderful that we can hold space for each other. But if it's having a negative effect on our psyche or our physical bodies, then we need to be able to set this down. And this is especially true with like if we have a partner or we're living with someone and we're sharing physical space with them. Well, this is probably going to happen a lot more frequently. So
I think the biggest part is ability to show empathy for me right now. And so that makes sense for, you know, it's for what and what for is like, yeah, I don't know why that's so hard for me to understand.
And sometimes I think it's a process of like, it says like going through it again and again till like we come to it. And if we don't have like the exact understanding of what that should feel like right now, that's okay too. So giving ourselves compassion to be like, I don't know right now is also okay. So when we do this practice, which we're going to do right now before we break for lunch, we're going to get a piece of paper. Then we're going to kind of meditate on something that we've been feeling. And so we'll take a minute when we do get our paper and we're just going to check in. And we're going to try to find something that feels big. What am I feeling in a really big way? Finding an emotional quality that has maybe been around you for a while. It could be something like a piece of shame, depression, anger, but just a piece of something. And it could be something you're curious about or react to or follows you around like a shadow. So finding the too much in our bodies, the too much in our minds. Is there something like that that's feeling too much? Sense into it with curiosity. Close down the eyes and kind of feel into that space. And then as you sit with that body sense, try to sense that if this piece of something has been following you around for a time, what is it like in your body? What does that feel like? Maybe it's hard to even identify because we've been carrying it for so long. So it feels really familiar. Notice if it feels familiar. When do you first remember feeling this something? Is it when we were younger? Is it new? When did it kind of peek its head? Maybe we can identify that. If not, that's okay. And maybe we can even start to ask where we were when you first felt that. And maybe we have a sense of what was happening there. Maybe not. And then notice who was there with. And now we're looking at this representation of the piece of paper. And we're sensing what is and is not ours with all that information. How much of this is really ours? How much of it feels like it might be not ours? Taking your time, allow this to come from the feeling sense. And then if you need to repeat the practice of feeling into it, you can repeat it a second or even a third. And notice also when we do, what is it like for you inside your body to set some of that stuff down? And then letting our paper kind of be our representation when we feel called to without rushing. You can start to remove the amount of that feels like it's not ours. Maybe it's a corner, maybe it's the paper. And then feel into it again once we tear our first piece off.
I was on no feeling about
Yeah,
it.
you're like, it's this much of it. So then the smaller piece, we feel back into it now and we're like, okay, I took that piece off. Is there anything left that doesn't feel like mine still? Feel into your body. Your senses. And if you feel like there's still a portion that you're carrying or feeling that isn't yours, you could tear another piece of paper to replicate that. And if you feel content that you've already removed that portion, then you can just leave it as is. If you do tear a second piece of paper, I want you to check in a third. Feel into the body for the third time when and if you need to. And then for the third time, if you still feel a piece of something that is not yours, feel free to tear a third piece. I really, really like how they talk about this too, that it's normal and healthy for a child to want to be helpful. Right? That's in our nature, especially when it's maybe our parents or something, or our caretakers or our loved ones.
That felt really good. I feel like
Good. I think it's like a very good image too of like, holy moly, I don't need to be carrying around those extra pieces, you know? And so what I want you guys to do now is when you're finished with the activity, take the pieces that were not yours. And I want you to discern whether you want to burn it, bury it, flush it down the toilet, put it in a body of water. No eating it, no eating it. We don't want it back in the body. It feels like that. I always tell my partner that my animal totem is the turkey vulture because I always eat all of the, I'm like the energetic janitor. I'm like, it's such a glorious totem and a glorious job, let me tell you. But you know, we can do that with where we just take on their stuff for them. And so I want you guys to take a moment to mindfully, consciously be like, these are the pieces of stuff I've been carrying around for others. And I'm making a commitment to myself to try and do this less and less. So when we're setting it down or burning it or burying it or whatever we're going to do with it, carry that intention with you. Okay. How was this exercise for you guys? Are you still in the process? If so, that's fine too.
Mine was interesting because it's similar to that compassion inquiry that I did with that lady. Yeah, it just like stems from childhood to teenager to adult to what I just went through with the same emotions and the same feelings, like carried from all of that. It's the same feeling pretty
Totally.
much.
Totally. How about you, Deb?
It was good. I was just thinking maybe I should put it in the recycle bin so it could be recycled into something better
I love that.
instead of
It's alchemy, transformation.
Yeah, transmuting that energy.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
I love that. So, you know, it's just another way of discerning, again, because we do get extra sensitive. My guess, as we find more science, will be that these mirror neurons are probably also increased when we have trauma, heightening our ability to be more sensitive because we know that the whole point of going into our fight or flight is protection. And so the body does these intuitive things to protect us. And so being able to know more about our environment and also being able to chameleon, because this is another thing that we do when we have trauma a lot of the times, is that we can fit anywhere. We can fit in any position. You could put us in anywhere and we would thrive. And it's like, that's a survival thing that we had to learn. So a lot of this ties into mirror neurons also. So I think it's really important to take the time to discern, am I picking up more stuff, my turkey vulturing stuff for other people that I don't need to? You know, because we can't do the work for other people as much as we want to, other than doing it for ourselves and letting that ripple effect go out into the world. So then we become the healthy mirror, right? And then people can mirror neuron us. And we can start to project that healthy frequency out, then that's how we create the change. Yes.
What comes to mind is the expression hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
So
Yes.
to learn to abuse others from being abused. So that's a mirror neuron thing happening there, repeating that same
100%.
behavior.
100%. And it's also even more confirmation why we want to remove ourselves from environments that are unhealthy too. Because it's like, I don't need to remain in a space where I'm going to be picking up all this extra negativity and chaos when I'm already dealing with my own stuff, you know? And so I think it is about coming back to self-care and cultivating healthy spaces for ourselves, knowing when we need to unplug from those around us to come back to ourselves, because we already have enough to carry around. We do not need to be picking up more of other people's stuff and trying to sort through that for them. That's their job.
Yeah.
So hopefully this can bring some awareness to that as a trauma response as well. It's not our job to go out and fix people. In fact, it can be a distraction from working on ourselves. And instead, the medicine is all about cultivating change in our own lives and really letting that ripple out. You know, we can want to share this with people, and that's beautiful. But I found that until they're really asking for the help and the information, they're probably not going to implement it. So it might be feeling like swimming upstream a little bit. And so, you know, yes, you guys are equipped with all your amazing wisdom and knowledge. The people who are going to be wanting that information, be the ones that you're sharing.
It's very difficult when you see someone you care about is suffering to not fix it.
Hardest thing.
Especially when it's your children.
It's like
But also I believe that each of our
Or your mother.
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Sometimes for me, I have to come back to the reality, like, or the higher knowing of like, we all of our souls incarnated to come and learn and grow. And so also that this is part of each of our growth and our soul growth, I believe. And so I can't do the work for anyone else on their soul journey, but I might be on their path, you know, and I might have the information. I might be a
To help
little
guide them,
roadmap or a stop sign or like a, you know, a waypointer on their journey. But again, we can't carry it for them. We can't put them on our backs and hike them out of the trauma, you know.
I think that's why I have such trust issues, is because of these mirror neurons and the fact that I didn't trust anything in my childhood really besides my feelings. And every time I moved somewhere, I remember my feelings the most out of any memory, and being in nature. Like I don't remember certain experiences other than being in nature, or certain feelings from going from California to Italy, from Italy to DC, and the feelings of all of that. That's the only thing I can remember. So my memory is really not great, because I'm sure I was just suppressing a lot of my emotions and not knowing how to express them. And it affected my psychology in so many ways.
So much. It's like right now, like now we can be like, okay, thanks for doing that, you know, psyche, thanks for doing that, brain. Be safe in the moment. I didn't have the tools to deal with it or unpack it, but now hopefully we're equipping ourselves with the tools to unpack these things and to process it in a really productive way.
And loving.
Yes.
Loving.
Compassionate.
Embody. I just need to embody it now.
Yeah. And you know, part of it too is like being really loving and realizing it's a process. Like it's a practice. It's like going to the gym. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that like, we don't just go into the gym and pick up the heaviest like dumbbells and start to lift them. Like we progress slowly, you know, maybe we start with 5 pounds, then we move up to 7 pounds. Now we're working with a 10-pound dumbbell to a 15. So thinking about our growth, our healing is kind of the same way, so that we can have that compassion for ourselves. And the more regularly we practice it, then it's like, yeah, we can pick up those heavy dumbbells anytime, because we're daily doing the practice of building that strength to do that. So these are mirror neurons and generational trauma and our community trauma. And So hopefully we can have a bigger understanding, and also, my hope is to just, I think, shine some light on that we're not alone. You know, most of us have trauma. I think they say like 1 in 4 women specifically also have trauma, and women have more traumatic experiences than men. Part of this, I think, is because we are vulnerable sexually and physically. And so this also brings in another aspect of abuse for women in particular. And so really having compassion, but learning what we need to move through this.
Are there any studies about the mother bonding with the son or a certain gender and how that correlates to the relationships that they get into?
Yes, definitely. I think our relationship with the opposite sex parent absolutely has a huge, and I'll see if I can't
Yeah,
find the science
so-
articles to post in the group chat too.
With the opposite sex or?
Yeah,
You know what, that's crazy you brought that up. So when I was 24, I realized that I put up with men's shit because I put up with my dad and I had to take care of him as a teenager. And so when I was 24, I had like this aha moment and I called my dad and I was like, you know, Dad, I just realized that I put up with men's shit because of you, because I've had to parent you throughout my life. Like, I was like, fuck you. Like, you know, like that's not okay. You know, and at that time, like he still had to justify his actions and his behavior. And he didn't really not justify his behavior or actions until I was like in my mid-30s. And so it's just kind of like wild how I was like, oh my God, you know, even if dad wasn't like physically abusive, he was mentally and emotionally abusive, and he was like
Yes.
half of my life. And so like I would come home and he would like lock me out of the house and I'd have to like just do whatever for however many hours until he was done with his episode. And then,
Right.
you know, and I would have to clean the house or whatever. And so it's just, it is kind of crazy that that's so true. It's
Well,
so
the crazy part is that my dad is alcoholic and his best friend and his son was the person who I started a relationship with when I was starting to drink and lost my virginity actually to this alcoholic guy when I was 17 years old. But I remember being at his house and my dad was drunk and couldn't drive home and I had to drive him home and like I was like at 18 or 19. So it was really hard for me to see my dad in that space, but also the connection that I had with the guy who I lost my virginity to and was in college with for 5 years, dealing with alcoholism and all of this stuff, like constantly fighting. And it's just interesting. My dad's like best friend's son is the guy who I did all this with. So that's why I'm like,
yeah, what a correlation.
correlating.
it's 100% that what we witness as a child, seeing it and learning that this is acceptable behavior, that we then embody that as adults and take it in as acceptable behavior. You know, like, hey, well, my mom was with a person that was an alcoholic and never home and only provided financially, and that was his contribution to the family. So then that's acceptable for me. That's normal for me. And in fact, that's what my body and my DNA and my frequency is probably going to attract. And the thing is, it's good because that's where the wound is, right? So this is why it's coming back up again, so that we can heal it for once and for all. But it's going to repeat. Those cycles will repeat until we discern, hey, this isn't working for me. Where did this happen? When did it happen? Okay, I'm going to nip that in the bud. But it does take our participation. And same thing, right? Like we're learning from the people who raised us, however they behaved, whatever they tolerated or whatever was normalized then is internalized as normal in our psyche and in our brain and in our lives. And so then we have to grow into like, oh, is that normal? You know what I mean? Like, is this what I want to embody? Oh, wow. I thought it was normal for a long time, but now no, as I'm going out into the world, I'm learning that's unacceptable, you know?
There's a lot of blind devotion in families. They excuse any behavior because that's my sister or my mother.
Exactly.
100%.
So toxic. There's no room.
That's my
Well,
whole family. It's just, it doesn't make sense.
Like it's acceptable because it's family, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
No way.
Absolutely.
That's always the excuse of my family. And like every time I would cry when I was drunk, they would just like make fun of me and instead being like, oh, Audrey has a problem. She might need help. Even my aunts didn't even do like anything, or like none of my, that's why it's like, I don't want to go to Thanksgiving where I used to get drunk and have these memories. Like, that's why I
Totally.
was in Costa Rica trying to help myself. And but they see it as, oh, she's living her best life. She doesn't need family. She's unhappy, or like poor Audrey, she's on this journey. It's like, yes, I am on a journey.
You're like, please look in the mirror. This is why when you look in the mirror, you'll see why I'm living in another place, because I'm unlearning all the unhealthy habits that I learned while being under your roof. So
Mhm. And they act like they're
compassionate.
not alcoholics, but they have wine every night and
Yeah,
drink.
and they're
adult
just so
drink.
conditioned.
this is also like something that people don't talk about, but like you're an alcoholic if you drink every day.
Oh
I
yeah,
remember
absolutely.
my partner saying like, you know, it's not a big deal if you drink every day, if you're not belligerent or if you don't do destructive things
yeah,
or if you don't hurt anyone. I'm like, explain that to your body when it gets cirrhosis of the liver. You tell me if it's not the same thing. Like
Yeah.
you're an alcoholic. It doesn't matter if you're a functioning alcoholic, you're still an alcoholic.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how much you have to drink. If you drink every single day, regardless the time of the day, you are an alcoholic.
It's so culturally acceptable.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Culture.
Yes.
Drink,
Yes.
drink, drink. Go to a club and order a Coke or a soda. And
Yep.
people don't know what to do with you if you're not getting drunk with them.
Yeah, I order water.
Exactly.
I'm like 100 pounds, so I am not good with alcohol, thank goodness.
I'm not either. And yeah, whenever I have liquor, I black out. And so I can't drink anymore. It's just not good
Yeah,
for my
I don't
body.
drink anymore either.
This is why we talk about like trauma and those unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol, because it is quite normal for people to go to it initially before we know how to, because we're looking for an escape. And initially it's going to offer a little reprieve and then it's going to hit you like a sledgehammer afterwards, you know? And so it's such a
And my esophagus was damaged from all the drinking, and it was just scary for me. And I was like, I need help, which is why I escaped to another country and traveled throughout the world to be like, I need a different lifestyle. I can't live this life anymore. And then COVID hit.
brave. How brave of you.
Right?
Like,
So brave and proud of yourself. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Just to even get the idea like, okay, this is no good. I need to do something different and then do something so big and challenging. Way to
Yeah,
go.
you completely removed yourself. That's amazing.
Mhm.
reasons why I don't live in New Mexico personally. I have so much trauma there that like I went there to deal with it and I dealt with it. And then it's like I go back to visit only to see my family and my children and my parents, and that's it. That is it. Like I have worked through my stuff there, but when I go back, it's like this is why I left, because I don't want to repeat these patterns and I want to live in a different way. And it's not conducive to be able to do that living in New Mexico, you know?
And New Mexico,
It is. It's really, really.
there's
is.
an energy there that is just something else.
It is like the bucket of crabs, like I'm telling you, you know, where you start to climb out and it's like they pull you back down.
Yeah.
So
And then when I want to leave cities, everyone's like getting mad at me for not wanting to live in cities. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I've changed into a new version of myself, but no, none of my friends could see that or honor that. And that's when I knew who my true friends were, is like, they didn't appreciate what I was doing, or on my yoga journey, they didn't support me. They're like, oh, she's weird. She needs help. Like she can't live this corporate life anymore. Yeah, I can't and I won't.
really what it is it's selfish because you're changing and they want you to be the character that you've always been in their reality, and they can't handle that you're changing because that means that they no longer have that character in their reality anymore. And so they're going to have to find another character to play that role. But, you know, meanwhile too, you setting that and saying like, nope, I'm not gonna be that character for you. I'm not gonna play this role. I'm not gonna step into your trap. And you're
And
gonna,
I'm not sorry if it's hard for you to see me go through, because that's the other feedback I got from my family is it's hard for them to see me doing this. And it like I'm like, okay, well, I'm not sorry for that.
Yeah.
and I'm sure like there's a part of them that like is sad that you're going through things and would like to help you in whatever way they could, but also like they can only do what they know. And it sounds like all that they know is what they've been doing for the same over and over again, you know, and it's not working for you. And so like you're going to be the way changer. You're going to be the one to change that pattern, you know, and that's courageous, it's brave, and it's challenging. It requires support. So,
And
you know,
compassion.
mhm,
Thank you, ladies, for being my support through this.
yeah,
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
It's something
My
to-
pleasure. Con gusto.
Something to keep in mind is evolution is like a pyramid, you know, the higher you go up on the levels, the less people you're surrounded by,
100%.
right? And it's only at the top. So there is a price for autonomy. People will fall away. And you can still value them and appreciate them and respect their beliefs.
Mhm.
Yeah,
People are religious. That's what they need in this point of their lives. They need to be told how to live, what to do. But you're, you know, and you don't need to judge all those people.
right.
Just do your own thing and keep
Make
going.
your way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make
That
your
was
way.
my problem with
too.
judging.
Like that it's not, I like the word verbiage, it's not lonely at the top, it's peaceful at the top,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. And who's meant to be with you will be with you.
The noise gets quieter, it dies
Mhm.
down, all the excess noise starts to fall away.
And we come in and go out alone to this world.
Exactly. The Buddhist
And
meditation.
I try to remind myself of that every day.
Yeah,
It's kind of morbid in a way, but I think it's saying that you are what you have.
totally. And
Honor that.
I
Know
think
that
it's
that's
also-
enough.
100. I think it's also important to have a connection to a higher source, whatever that is for anyone also, you know, whether it's love or something else, but just to
And
do like,
how you get love too, I think is important because some people get love through animals or nature. You know, I think that's also something to keep in mind.
totally. I agree. Which is why you see a lot of people with trauma with therapy animals too. You know, it's like we're supporting ourselves, we're learning how to support ourselves. So it's such a process.
Their unconditional love from pets. Very unconditional. They
And
just need you.
babies.
Even if you kick them, they'll come
All
back.
about. Mhm.
Me
I'm so
too.
good with that.
That's why I like to hang out with kids and animals. I always tell people that, like Tim, my partner, whenever we go out to like a party at someone's house, he'll be with like all the adults and you'll see me like on the floor with kids and animals. We just know that that's like the way it's gonna go. So I'm like, see you guys later. Have a good little talk over there. I'm gonna be hanging out with the babies and the animals. They're authentic. They're real.
Right?
You know?
And growing up, we want to get out of the kids section and from the kids table and join the adults. And then as we get older, it's like maybe this wasn't such a
A
bad thing.
mistake.
Yeah, I like that song. The happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'll put that in the group
Put it
too.
in.
Yes, that's such a good one. I love that. I need to do that. So I don't.
So, do you guys have any questions about any of the stuff we kind of covered this morning? Or comments, anything?
I have a question about like after this, is there like a written exam or is our teaching 1 hour thing the exam or both, or how's this go?
Good, good. So this is something I did want to talk to you guys about too. So for tomorrow, yes, I would like for us to do like a 75-minute final video. And I was thinking that I would rather almost do them live and then take each other's classes, but I don't know what the schedule looks like you guys tomorrow. So I was wondering that. And there will be a very, very short written test too, or final, whatever. I like to call them reviews. I don't like the word test. not really something that you're gonna pass or fail. It has nothing to do with you doing that. It's just kind of like a refresher of going over what we went over. And so really, I'm just gonna send you the quiz, if we want to call it that, a review, so that you have a little paper to refresh. You're on mute, Sue.
Is it multiple choice?
It's not, it's like maybe 12 questions though, so it's super easy. And you're gonna be taking it at home, and I really don't care if you use stuff to look up the answers. Like, this is, again, this isn't about creating anxiety about something. This is just like, we're sharing information, and I just want you guys to have a little review. So really, what the final class will be is just for us to kind of take a class from each other and like put our own little twist on it, you know? Teach a little yoga flow, add in the things that you really liked that we learned during these past week, and kind of cultivate a little your idea of what a trauma-informed class looks like. And that'll be the final. So tomorrow I would like to take them in person live, if you guys are open to doing that. Deb, what's your schedule tomorrow? Also, is it okay that I call you Deb? I'm like a.
Yes, I'm not a fan of Debbie, but Deborah's fine.
Okay.
I am clear schedule tomorrow. Wow, cool. So obviously I'm behind in my homework videos all the way up to this point. So I'm absolutely going to take one each day and do it and hand it in and learn
Yeah.
all that. So I mean, I can teach us tomorrow. I may do another one once I've caught up with all those and, you know, to add to it, but I'll do my best from, you know, 'cause I haven't been able to watch in the mornings. So.
Yeah, and don't stress about it. I don't want any of this like whole thing to be stressful for any of you guys. This is like, we're already moving through trauma, you know what I mean? And this is supposed to be something supportive, and I want it to be something that feels good for you guys too. So I don't want you stressing about the videos. With Cami, she hasn't taken her 200 hours, so I asked her to just send us her video after she takes the 200 hours. So you guys will get her class probably in like 3 weeks. And for you guys tomorrow, I was thinking, so it's up to you guys as far as the schedule, but we have either we could do 6:30 to 7:45, or we could do 9 to 10:15. This is our time, or 10:30 to 11:45. Any of those times resonate for you guys wanting to teach?
I can do the 10:30.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll do the one right after.
It's either before, you could either do 6:30 to 7:45 or 9 to 10:15.
My brain isn't functioning with the times because of the time difference,
I
2
know.
hours.
I know.
So
2 hours
like,
ahead. I'm sorry.
Behind it.
I'm
It
ahead.
would be
2
11 a.m.
You're ahead 2 hours. So you could either do 8:30 to 9:45, or you could do 11 to 12:15.
So Audrey is doing 10:30, right? Your time.
Which would be like 12:30 your time.
Right. So you want me to go before or after her? Is the question, I guess, right?
Well, you can only go before, but it would be either, so 8:30 to 9:45 your time, or you could do 11 to 12:15 your time.
Okay, 11 till 12:15 my time.
So are we not doing so what is the plan for tomorrow then?
So tomorrow you guys will be doing the cacao ceremony in the morning,
Okay.
your morning class. And then after that, we'll just move into doing Deb's class, and then we'll do your class. And then we'll close out the circle just with a little closeout of our group and conversation. And then, of course, we'll leave the WhatsApp group open for all of us so that we can continue to communicate there. So yes,
So there's no like philosophy or anything tomorrow, really?
no,
Okay.
So the online class that we usually watch is going to be live tomorrow, basically?
no, the online class that you're gonna, well, as far as like, okay, let me just, the 6:30, this early morning class will be the recording of the cacao ceremony. And then Deborah, you'll be doing your final live. So we'll just do it on Zoom. So we'll meet on Zoom like we do normally for our philosophy, but we'll get to take the class live with you, Deborah. And then after we take your class, we'll take Audrey's class.
And then after my class, will there be a break or what's gonna be in the
After
afternoon?
your class, so technically, like if we were all staying here tomorrow, we would have our graduation lunch like at noon. And then we would be done for the day. We would just have like our little graduation ceremony. Since we can't do like a ceremony technically with each other, we're just gonna take each other's class. We're gonna have that final cacao ceremony, and then we'll all talk obviously afterwards and close out with our comments and our love and just, you know, anything that we want to discuss further.
So my question is, just so I'm clear, what time do I need to be online tomorrow
Tomorrow
Before-
online,
in the morning?
only have to be on right when you are going to teach, which is going to be 11 o'clock my time, your time, excuse me. 11 o'clock your time, we'll meet on Zoom and you'll be ready to teach your 75-minute trauma-informed class.
Okay, and then Audrey, and then after is the ceremony cacao.
You could do, if you wanted to, you could do the cacao ceremony before. I think it's already, check and see if it's already uploaded. But you could start the day. I would like if you guys would start the day with it if you have time to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't, that's okay too. And it's a shorter class. It's about an hour. So it's not a terribly long, it's not over an hour long. So it'll be a short morning cacao practice and then we'll move into the classes, the finals. It's just about it. So I'll just tag it in the chat.
Thank you. So Cami, you're doing your 200-hour starting next week.
Yeah, starting on Monday.
That's great.
Yeah. I know, I'm so excited. Like it was all divine. Like I knew I was coming here for the trauma informed, but I had no idea I was going to do the 200 here too. So I'm like so happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Such a good process.
And Audrey, when are you doing your 300-hour? Are you just going right into it or taking a break?
I'm gonna do probably the next 4 virtually. I'm not sure which one I'm gonna do next yet, but I'll probably do yoga nidra, raha yoga, meditation, and another one. Yeah, I think I'll probably start that soon in a week or so. I just haven't figured out when.
Yeah, I have not seen any kind of schedule or anything about how to do that 300-hour thing yet. So just decided during this
Yeah, I
class.
think what Courtney said is you can kind of do it at your own pace. So it's just like a certain amount of times with recordings, and I'm not sure either how it works with schedule, but I think when you do it at your own pace, you can just do it whenever you have time and then send the information to her. So I still need to talk with Courtney about that too, but I'll let you know once I figure it out and maybe we can do it kind of together or help each other.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So I'm going to need about another week to just consolidate everything here. and
Right,
get all-
me too.
Yeah.
It's a lot to digest first.
Yeah.
To move on to the next ones, because it's so much information.
Yeah, and you're way ahead of me because you've been doing it all the way along where, back and forth. So I'm gonna try to really just, besides teaching just this.
And it's funny
And-
how you say my name is kind of Canadian, or French. It's
Ah,
like in Spanish,
sorry.
everyone, no, it's
Yeah.
okay. Everyone there calls me like Audrey because they can't say like Audrey. And then you're kind of saying it like Audra, which some people do as well with
Well,
French.
I speak fluent French too. It's my second language. And I have very good friend. We call it Audrey. Audrey.
Yeah.
Like AU in French is Audrey.
Yeah,
And
Ah.
my whole
Camille.
name is French. It's
I know.
Camille Leon. It's like my first name is Essica. So I was namesaked after my great uncle's mother. Yeah. So it's Essica Camille Leon.
Nice. Yeah, so I'm used to talking to my friend Audrey, and so my mouth isn't doing
It's
this.
totally fine. I love it. It's fine. I just think it's great.
I love French. I have a friend who speaks French and I like every time I'm like, talk to me in French. Tell me something. Tell me.
I'm like, all I know is oui, oui. Like when I was little, my grandpa Frank taught me Spanish and French. And so like I did know a lot, but like over the years, because like I didn't finish growing up around him. And so I lost it because my dad didn't speak Spanish or French. But I did a little bit when I was younger.
It's those like, if you don't use it, you lose
Yeah,
it.
if you don't use it, you lose it.
That's what happened with me in Italian. I learned it when I lived in Italy, and then I lost it because I didn't practice it. And then I learned Spanish. So I'm like confused with the Latin languages because they're so similar.
They are very similar.
It's the way our brains are wired. Certain people can learn languages very easily and retain them. Some people speak 5-6 languages like no problem.
Yeah.
Just depends on your brain, what lights up in their technical.
And the key too is like I wish I would have learned it all when I was little, like just had parents that just like my friend who lives here who speaks French, her son speaks English, French, and Spanish, and he can bounce between all three. Like he'll look at me and talk English, he'll look at her and talk French, and then he looks at his stepdad and starts to talk in Spanish. And like all within the same conversation. I'm like, you're amazing.
Cool. That is
And he's
awesome.
not even like 6. So I'm like, wow.
That's so
Start
cool.
young.
Awesome. I love that.
My next life, I'm praying for parents that are bilingual.
Yep.
Well, in Quebec, people speak, we call it franglais, half French, half English in the same sentence sometimes. You speak both languages, you realize there's certain things that are expressed more accurately in French than English.
Yeah. We do
And
speak.
Spanglish.
Yeah.
Yeah. English, yeah.
Hablar and
Quite a bit.
Spanglish mucho.
Uh-huh.
My youngest daughter does sign language. Like I taught her sign language when she was 6 months old, and then in school she still continues her sign language. So it's really cool because she knows a lot. Like she knows so much. Like sometimes she'll sign to me, and I'm like, whoa. Oh, wait.
Like, I don't speak that.
I'm like, can you slow down? And she's like, Mom, I'm like, no, I don't. So yeah, so it's pretty cool.
All right, so after lunch, we're going to be doing a few practices. We're going to be doing a little, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with TRE. Have any of you heard of that? So it's the attention and trauma release exercise. And so just we'll bring like mats and anything that you be comfy, but it's basically like we spend quite a bit of time in sleeping butterfly pose. And so we do a few little exercises before it, but the key is like we start to bring like the legs like closer and closer. And meanwhile, they start to have like a somatic release. So like a lot of the times the legs are getting like the shape that starts to look like this in the legs. And so for me, this has been another really helpful release. When we do yoga, we know that the places that store the stagnant energy the most are those lower 2 chakras. And so that's what the tension and trauma release exercise targets. And so it's another form of releasing from the body, but we don't have to go into the emotions. So the body, it's a release for the body without us having to get too involved in the emotion. For me, my hips sometimes will lock. Like I can feel when they get like the blockage and the tension and the tightness. And so anytime I start to feel that, I come into the TRE practice and release, and it's such a good one. So we're going to talk about somatic shaking for the nervous system after lunch. And then we're also going to get into the Wim Hof breath. So the Wim Hof breath we did in our practice. So you guys will also practice it again tomorrow with your cacao ceremony. But I'm glad to be able to go over it with you also before you practice tomorrow on your own, so that you'll know what you're getting into also. So that's what we have for after when we come back for lunch. So just so you know what to prepare for.
Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. You guys have a good lunch, and then we'll see you back online in an hour.
Sounds good. You too.
Thanks.
Bon appetit.
Buen
One
provecho.
special.